Good evening. Hello. Good evening and welcome to an evening with Nick Cave at Westminster College. My name is Heidi Levine. I'm an associate professor of English at the college and part of a large committee of people who worked very hard to put tonight together, as well as the broader event that this is all part of, the Hancock Symposium, which is a 2-day series of events where we shut down campus to regular classes and instead invite speakers from around the world to talk about interesting topics. And so we're very, very pleased that you're all here with us. Most particularly, some of the people who know and love Nick Cave best who are here in the audience today. This is a true family affair, and we're very glad that everybody is here with us tonight. This might be the right moment to remind everybody to please double check and make sure that your devices are set to a mode that will not ring or beep. And also, you should have received a note card and an assessment survey from the student helpers. There will be a video very shortly, and as that video plays, the student helpers will be coming up and down the aisle to collect those note cards. At the end of the talk today, I'll be reading some of those questions from your note cards aloud to Nick for live responses. So if you would like to have your question considered, please do pass those note cards to either end of your aisle so that they can be collected by a student helper. I also need to thank our many generous sponsors who made tonight possible, the Missouri Humanities Council and their small grant program, Callaway Bank, and specifically Ms. Debbie LaRue, Mr. and Mrs. Victor Pasley, and America's National Churchill Museum, most notably its director, Mr. Tim Riley, who has been an invaluable friend and source of support. So please thank all of those sponsors. That's why we're here. Tonight's evening will be a little bit non-traditional. The theme of this year's Hancock Symposium is the changing nature of work and play. And so over these 2 days, we've been inviting people to come to campus to talk about what it might mean to build a life that is, in which our working hours are spent not simply in drudgery and mindless toil, but also doing things that are fulfilling, that are full of ethical responsibility, social engagement, things that leave us feeling good at the end of the day that we've spent our lives in those ways. And so as the committee was pondering who to invite as a keynote speaker, there could be no one better than Nick Cave, someone whose work embodies playfulness, joy, creativity, but is also asking us to engage in difficult conversations, inviting us with beauty to talk about things like social justice issues, problems, issues that we can come together in community to speak about together. And tonight's evening is going to be equally playful in keeping with that theme. We're not going to have a traditional sort of lecture format. We'll begin with a brief video that Nick and his husband Bob supplied. It's a portion of an interview that was done on the news and that gives an overview of some of Nick's life and work. It's about a 3-minute video, and again, as that's being played, remember to pass your note cards to the aisle. After that, we'll bring out Nick and Professor Kenny Green. Another local art legend, Tai Chi master, and jeweler extraordinaire. And the two of them will have an informal, improvisational, playful conversation, which will go wherever it goes. At the end of that time, I'll read some of your questions aloud to Nick. So thank you very much for being here, and what follows next will be a video.
A little more powerful.
Mosaics went up as part of renovations to one of the busiest spots in the city. CBS 2's Vladimir Duthier spoke with the artist who was tasked with making a piece to represent the soul of the city.
Beneath the hustle and bustle of America's busiest crossroads lies a subway platform that's as vibrant as the billboards above it.
This is how my brain sort of feels.
Thanks to the vision of artist Nick Cave, whose dynamic mosaics will be seen by millions at the Times Square subway station.
We're on the go, we're moving quickly, but there's also moments where everything does stop and we take in that moment. And so it's really about that and being able to appreciate this sort of art that you're surrounded by.
The mosaics are based on Cave's signature Soundsuits, sculptures that were first born out of the 1992 police beating of Rodney King.
As a black man, I was in shock. I really didn't know what to do in that sort of moment. I am grateful, thankful that art has always been my savior. You know, it's the place where I knew that I could go to flush out these emotions and these sort of frustrations.
His first Soundsuit was made of twigs he found in a Chicago park. The fluid motion of the sculpture made him realize it's something he could wear.
The moment that I put it on, it hid my gender, race, class. And so I was forced to look at something without judgment. A lot of the Soundsuits are built on discarded materials, something less than, sort of bringing value to the unvalued and building something from nothing.
There's so much about this work to experience and to take in.
Sandra Bloodworth heads the program that chooses art for the public transit system. She said Cave's mosaics embody the experience commuters should have.
First thing they're going to do is reach out and touch it.
Yeah.
It brings beauty underground, and beauty that brings out our better nature, that brings out the best of us.
And that's what you want when you're riding the subway, right?
Exactly.
The mosaics are based on photographs of Cave's Soundsuits during performances, now set in the bedrock of New York City.
You just glanced over when you were talking about it. What were you thinking of?
I'm just sort of thinking that I can't believe it. I can't believe that probably 30 years ago I was writing in a journal and I wrote this statement working toward what I'm leaving behind. And to think that this is one of those moments. This is here forever.
Vladimir Dutip, CBS News, New York.
What a legacy.
It is stunning work.
So powerful, right? Wow.
I hope it stays up there forever.
I know.
The grandmother refused. She said she was determined to stand out of her wheelchair as she approached the Queen's coffin. In London, Ali Bauman, CBS 2 News. Christine, back to you.
Good evening. Good evening. We'd like to thank you all. We'd like to thank the Hancock Symposium and a wonderful opportunity that we have tonight to interview Mr. Nick Cave. So, join us. Join us in welcoming our friend, and we're going to start with we're going to try something a little different. I want to know everything. And so let's start with where you want to begin, Fulton, and go on, please. Well,
what is your question?
So that's the question. What do you want to tell us?
You know, I can tell you that it's exciting to be here in this moment. You know, with my family and friends, and yeah.
And that's very exciting. So let's work it through. Because, again, I've only known you from your works and interviews and people that have spoken so highly of you, and had the opportunity to know you and see you grow and prosper, and also the gift that you like to bring back to people here at home and all over the world with your sensitivity and your abilities and your crew that do all of these magnificent things. So how did it begin? What inspired you?
What inspired me to be an artist, or sort of inspired me to sort of move in that sort of direction with my life. You know, I think it's just, you know, as a kid, you know, that's, you know, I've always been creative. You know, and, you know, my mother, you know, she you know, taught me how to color in the lines in the color book, and if I wanted the horse to be purple, that was okay, and, you know, so it's really sort of that being sort of the beginning, and understanding that, you know, in the family, there's lots of creative people. I come from a very creative sort of network of woodworkers, quilters, seamstresses, artists, musicians. So it's always been there.
Right.
You know, as a young kid, you know, raised with 5 additional brothers, it's not that I was thinking about art, but I was certainly sort of looking at afar as my grandmother would be quilting during the evening, or my grandfather would be making something in wood, or, you know, my uncle painting. So it was, or my aunt sewing. So it was something that I sort of, that caught my interest.
Right. Mm-hmm. So what kind of materials started to use? We used all of them from those influences, the painting, the seamstress ideas, the carpentry. You use those to start winding your way into the art world?
Well, you know, I think it started as, you know, you've raised, you know, 7 brothers. I'm second to the oldest. And so it was like these hand-me-downs that I just was not having it. And so, you know, that was the beginning of sort of like cutting something up and reimagining it as something else. And so, you know, when I think about sort of the moments that sort of led to a curiosity, was sort of, that would be a real sort of moment.
Now, now, one of the things I noticed in life was texture, all kinds of texture. That seems to be a real inherent thing with every material or part of your work. So the different textures, the play against texture, contrast the textures, what really motivates you?
You know, I think I've always been drawn to material as really as sort of a form of security, comfort. You know, it's like that kid that had, you know, that dirty blanket that refuses to get it washed, but it was just that security and that sort of need to sort of be able to touch something and that, you know, he could sort of identify with. And so it was, you know, I was interested in textures then, but I've always been interested in fashion, you know, as a young kid.
Oh, yeah.
You know, my mother brought my first platform shoes when I was like 14 or something.
Oh, right.
And,
you're in it.
you know, so I'm sort of like in it, interested in it. And, you know, I was weaving in high school, and so it was just these sort of things that are making something from nothing and
Right.
finding value in that.
But again, you seem like you're starting with something and then deconstructing or reconstructing or adding to or taking away. Is that?
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay. So my grandmother had this box under her bed with all of these squares and L's and diamonds that were different types of cloth. And anytime we had the patch of blue jeans, that was the place you went and pulled it out. And certain patterns and certain colors would draw you in. So did you have that experience as well? Just something just catches you and you have to do something with it?
You know, I would say like the button box.
Yeah, that one.
Just, you know, putting my hands in it and just sort of looking at all these buttons and just the feeling of them was brought comfort and again, not thinking that, you know, that's what I use in my work today. But, you know, again, it was just sort of imagining what was possible in that sort of moment.
Right. So did you start differentiating the bones from the plastic, from the metal to the wood,
Oh,
the
yeah.
hollow backs and all?
Totally.
And also, I like the ones that were on the cards and they hadn't been touched yet, and you could decide what you wanted to do with them. And also, the tools. Now, I like tools. What type of needles and hooks and then the thimbles and all that, the accoutrements, what about those things?
I mean, you know, I knew that they were there. I knew how they served as I was watching my grandmother quilting. But, you know, I was very interested in, like, the tool wall in my grandfather's shed. You know, just, you know, there was an order. There was a way in which, you know, place where everyone fit. And something about that sort of display of these objects that sort of had purpose and, you know, allowed something to be sort of created or made from them was sort of interesting to me. So, you know, as I sort of think about that, you know, there's moments where that becomes part of decision-making in my work today.
So I have a habit of interviewing tools because I'm trying to get a tool to do a particular thing. So I'll try one and it might not be giving me what I want. So do you go back to favorite tools or things that give you a certain aspect? When you have them in order, do you code them or do you label them? Or?
No, not really.
You just reach one?
You know, I know what each one does. Now, maybe I'm more interested in sort of breaking its function and sort of using it in a different way. So I mean, I think I do more of that.
Yeah.
But, you know, they're all, necessary in some form or another.
So also, do you make tools?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
You know, I make tools based on, it really depends on the project, but, you know, methods that sort of can speed up a process or, you know, not only do I sort of come up with these ideas, but, you know, my assistants, you know, they'll say, you know, Nick, I think this, you know, if we sort of approached it this way and sort of used these sort of techniques or tools, then, you know, it will move the sort of process along quicker. So always we're sort of imagining and thinking about ways to get the work done, alternative ways.
So another thing I'm interested in is how you go from really limited sketch or thought particulars and then expand it and grow it to some of the immense things that you've done. How do you extrapolate?
Believe it or not, I don't really sketch.
Oh.
No. I've never, I don't know, I think I don't sketch because I don't want to I really don't want the answers.
Gotcha.
I really don't want it to be resolved in my head as opposed to, and I also want to accept the process of whatever may happen along the way. So, nothing's is never perfect, and that's okay.
Oh, yeah.
And so, when I don't sketch, then I'm completely all in, like 110% in, and I'm just making it, and then all of us, then there's a moment when it has arrived, like, oh shit, what did I make? And so it's that sort of thing that is interesting to me, that, and just the curiosity of that.
Right, of the moment in building.
Yeah, and the surprise element.
So then in your environment, your creative environment, so you have all of these things at your ready, and then you start grabbing as the thought hits you. You're building the airplane as you fly it? Is that
I am the studio works like this. I have to have the materials, everything that I can possibly imagine that I'm going to use around me, everything. Because it's important that the moment I start, I am just on the move, going through it, failing, redoing, but it's amazing when I don't have to stop because I don't have something. So for me, it's important that I have all of the surplus that I need, equipment, and then I can get to work. Wow. So it's really, it's a wonderful sort of process and space to be in.
Oh, yeah. So sounds like you need a vast space with a lot of containers and wall space and cubbies and things like that.
Yeah, I'm extremely organized. Extremely organized.
Well, does that go back to the calendar? Will it take you back? Well, the discussion of how things were ordered when you were a kid. If you wanted to know where or what you were doing that day, you had to look at the calendar.
Oh.
So that,
yeah.
That's where the order came from?
It certainly did.
So.
Okay, I do the dishes on Thursday. But it's everything was there was structure, there was duties, all of that was there.
So you have this imperative need for order just to live and do, right?
Yeah, but then in order for me to be clear, I have to have order.
So, and then you get to orchestrate all those things as you. Now, I'm thinking, what gives you some of the themes that you want to express some of your emotions with? Just something in the news, something with fabric, or how do you go about that?
I think, the majority of the work has always been sort of based on really what's going on politically in the world. And so that really has been the catalyst for most of the work. And it has, it also has allowed me to sort of, that's that space that I work through, all that trauma. I'm fortunate to have art as that sort of space to do that. So, as much as I'm sort of producing it for the world, I'm also sort of healing and taking care of my wellness in that process.
Well, many people have discussed art as a means or a vehicle for expressing emotions that you aren't really able to verbalize or express any other way. And as you work, you're finding that those emotions come to play as you evolve in the piece, and things are coming to you as you work with it. That's not really a question, but the idea for me is you use that as therapy, and and you suggested. Do you suggest other people doing that and freeing themselves?
You know, I'm not. Whatever works for you or anyone else. I think that we all have to find those the sort of conditions and sort of behaviors that will best sort of fit us as individuals in whatever the need may be in the moment. So.
But oftentimes in the world, when you do examine politics and the environment and things, you can feel very wounded by those things that are out there. So I'm trying to put it in the category of how it acts as a salve or a touchstone or things like that
Right.
your involvement. Right.
For me, I'm an emotional person, I think, or I'm sensitive. I'm not very emotional, but I'm sensitive. Although I started out very emotional. But I think that, I sort of, I'm a messenger first, and so therefore, I use art as this vehicle for change, and so, I'm here to respond to, be the voice for those that can be heard, and doing that through the form of art making. But I have, sometimes it's very difficult, very hard, very dark. But I get to work.
Well, yeah.
So that's where I can sort of work it out.
Well, first of all, I want to thank you for being the messenger, and because that means you'll operate more like the light in the darkness, something to gravitate to hold on, and to give you inspiration. So I'd like to thank you. Well, how did you discover that you were a messenger?
I think it was just one day that, I think it's just through this sort of rigor of sort of, questioning everything that you're doing and it's just, it's a calling. It's sort of, it's bigger than me. Mm-hmm. And so it's not that I can necessarily pinpoint it, but, that's where I become more liberated. I'm free when I'm sort of working in that sort of capacity. I'm not interested in sort of how the work is received, as opposed to the fact that it needs to be delivered. So I can move on to the next assignment. So it's really sort of just something that I know.
And so, well, that really elevates. Do you feel a personal responsibility, or is it a burden at times for you to be that messenger? Because sometimes you're carrying a heavy message.
I don't think it's a burden because I have the space to respond. And I don't think that it's, I don't know if I think about it in terms of responsibility or sort of heavy in weight. It's just something that it's just what I am.
That's good. Well, I want to speak for several people and say that I know we're really uplifted by a lot of your work. I am personally, and I know a lot of people here have spoken to that point, and how the message is coming through, and that no matter what the darkness or the situation, that there can be a way to focus on something better. And I think the fact that you've gotten your work around the world, and in the misproportions, that gives you not a responsibility, but that gives you a special place in my heart, and I think other people's heart, because you do care enough and you're sensitive enough to try and speak to others or for others that aren't able to express those things. And I'm fascinated by you as a person, and you seem to be very giving as well. And that's something I like to reflect on. So the fact that you're ready to give back and give more, well, how's that feel, to be on the other end? I mean, it's generous.
I don't think about it like that. I think about it more of a responsibility. And not that I feel, it's not sort of, I mean, it's a big world out there, so I'm not like,
yeah, well, but
you know, I'm doing what I can do. And it's all in or nothing. And that's a great feeling that that I've been the one chosen to do that.
And thank you.
You're welcome.
And now, okay, now this is the other thing that going along with that. So I read someplace, now you're moving along as far as maturing. And then you start to look back at the kids coming along or people coming along, and the work needs to continue, right? And so you're one messenger. How do you inspire other messengers to take up the mantle?
You know, as an educator, you know, I'm working with amazing, you know, young artists, and they're in the next generation. So I'm sort of, I ask a lot of them. And, you know, if this is what you want to do, it's a lot of commitment, it's a lot of sacrifice, and it's, you know, it takes a lot of hard work. You know, you're gonna fall many times, and you have to get back up and get back in the game. So, you know, as a professor, you know, I think with students, particularly grad students, I work with grad students. So as a grad student, we all sort of scout out the school that we're interested in going to. We also know who it is that we're going to be working with. And so, you know, my students, they sort of know me based on sort of doing the research. So they really sort of, based on that, there's a demand that is required from everyone. So I just encourage everyone to sort of be working, you know, be fearless, fail. So, and then maybe success, but who knows? It's all a gamble, right?
Oh, yeah, absolutely, yeah. And so, and that's...
And I'm willing to gamble and risk it all and shit like that. I do. I'm all in. I just go for it.
Well, and that's the important thing, because we tell the kids a lot that success is a poor teacher, because you don't really learn anything if you're very successful all the time. Right. And you have to not consider it a failure when something doesn't work.
No, right. It's a lesson.
So, and then the encouragement that someone like you that has had success, failure, and success, how do you build that character within them? Just by working with you, or seeing your process?
I just think it's about support. It crushes me when I see, after critique, a student emotionally falling apart. And so for me, it's like I will allow you to sort of be down there for a couple of minutes, and I'm like, it's time to get up. It's not the end of the world. And so it's really about support and trust and things of that sort.
Well, and I think the students have to realize how much you care about their ultimate success.
Right.
So, and back to being a sensitive person, you seem to be able to express things in a different manner where it's not always vocal. Talk about some of those inner voices you might hear or speak to.
Wow, that's such a big question. Inner voices. I'm thinking about, like, right now what's happening in the studio. And I've got this solo show up right now in Chicago. It's great that it's there. It's great that this is there for me, because I can sort of go back to it as much as I would like. And so it's nice to be able to go there and to look at this sort of 3.5 decade survey and knowing that this is what I've been doing with my life. But it's also interesting for me to think about, like, what's next. And so I've got some interesting new sort of ideas. I'm going to be doing some painting here shortly. I'm gathering all of the materials right now, and I don't know how to paint, but I'm going to be painting. And that's all that matters.
That's exciting. So, again, that's a new medium, but you're still trying to do the same thing, right?
Yeah, it's sort of, I've been thinking about it for like 3 years. And so I've been gathering the materials, so they're all coming into the space. And I'm like, oh. I'm like a little scared, but I'm looking, but it's getting ready to happen.
But that won't keep you from jumping, right?
No, I'm jumping. I'm just gonna walk to the edge. I don't jump forward, I jump, just fall into it.
Good. And,
but I'm sort of, I think for me, new ideas, new projects, it takes me a minute to sort of really fully think them through. And I may be writing a bit, but rarely am I sketching it.
Well,
as I said before, right. But I'm thinking about it, and
so but the writing can be like a blueprint or specs or specifications for what you're going to do.
But I don't know if I reread what I wrote. I think it's just like me writing it in the moment, and so I don't forget a thought if I need to go back and reread it.
Oh, okay, but I get it. But and so you. But I like the fact that you're staging. I'm going to put this here and then put that there, so when the time is right, I can go.
Right,
So,
that's good. I like that staging.
and
Yeah.
you're building the
Before the
things that you want to do as you do it, and the things that are already ready. So I heard that you like flea markets and things like that, places you can go and look at collections. Or what's that experience like when
Well, you know, that's really sort of where I think a lot of my resources are. So, you know, like me and my partner, we'll jump on a plane and fly to Washington State, one-way ticket. We'll rent a cargo van, and then we'll just flea market all the way back to Chicago. So that's really how I do it. I have my sort of basics that I need, but then I'm always wide open for new ideas and things to sort of trigger a new thought. But what's happening now is that I'm finding that I'm making work in the moment as I'm flea marketing. Like, isn't that crazy? Like,
no, a la prima.
Like, I am like literally, like I found this dog. It's this sort of ceramic Doberman. You know, my partner was like, you gotta look at this dog. It is like amazing. And I'm like, a dog? Like, I'm not even thinking about a dog? He's like, no, come and look. And I'm like, leave me alone. And so then I go look at this dog, and I was like, it's really good. It's really good. And then as I'm looking at the dog, I'm thinking like, you know, it needs to recline on a gold settee. And he's like, what? And let me tell you, within the next 2 hours, what did we find? So we're looking at this gold settee. The salesperson standing next to us, Bob says, can I go get our dog? And the salesperson's like, okay, like, so here he comes with this big dog, carrying it in to set it on the gold settee so I can sort of imagine what's next and how that sort of all is unfolding. So that's what's happening. But it's that sort of like moment when I know that it's on.
Oh, yeah.
Like it's just rolling, and I've got to be able to sort of be responding in the moment, on the fly. It's so intuitive that it's like amazing.
That's great. Yeah. And you feel it, and as well as see it.
Oh, yeah.
And so, Washington State, is that just a distance or a destination that will put you on a journey? So do you start south and go north often, or do you have particular areas you like to search out?
No. I mean, there's a world out there, so like I may be in Paris, but I'm like, oh God, how am I getting this stuff home? But I mean, but if there is something that I have to have, oh, I figure it out, trust. It gets to Chicago.
Wonderful. So, and then, well, I can't imagine. I want to look at your space now. I really need to see your space.
Why?
Well, because I'm nosy. And I got to know. It's like, well, one of those, several of those.
Well, you know, based on my work, you would think that I would be a hoarder. But I am completely, I am so not. I get what I need, and in that moment, it looks like a bit concerning. But, you know, the work consumes so much material.
Okay.
And then the studio is completely bare. Isn't that crazy?
Empty stage, and then you're building.
And then the work goes out in the world and I never see it again. Just that whole, the process of like, prepping and sort of making, and then it disappears forever. It's crazy.
Well, that goes back to the Soundsuit, the original. It wasn't exhibited right away after you
No.
did it. So tell us about that process.
That was in '92, and that was in response to the Rodney King sort of incident. But imagine like for the first time we all saw on video this human being being beaten was just traumatizing. It was very traumatizing. And so, I was struggling with that, being a black male and thinking about just that and sort of what does it feel like to be targeted, to be sort of brutally sort of abused in that way and violated. And so, I happened to be in the park, but I was doing all this reading about the incident. But what I found interesting is how they described him larger than life, worked out with prison weights, scary. And I was just imagining in my brain, what does that look like? And so, I don't know, there was a twig on the ground, and I just started collecting all the twigs. I don't know why, but I took them home. Well, I went home and got a grocery cart, came back to continue to gather my resources, then went back home, and then started to make this object, which I thought was a sculpture, but then I could put it on. And then the moment I put it on and started to move, it made sound.
Wow.
So that's how Soundsuit came about. But I made this object because I was trying to sort of create this object that was a form of protection, that was sort of protecting my spirit, my soul. And it hid gender, race, and class. And so, I was sort of coating myself in this sort of suit of armor of sorts. But then the moment that I saw it for the first time, I was like, oh, shit. I knew, when I saw it, I knew that my life would never be the same. Yeah, it was that feeling. I just knew it when I saw it. So I did about, I would say, 10 Soundsuits that I didn't show. Because at that time, I had just, again, I had just made this artwork. And I think mentally I wasn't quite caught up with it.
Right.
And so I just needed more time to sort of bring a level of understanding of what I just made and why is it here? And then maybe, 5 years later, I had my first show of the work, which then led that Soundsuit to be on a cover of a magazine. So again, everything was happening so quick that I was just like trying to process it all and keep up with it all. But, it's that sort of thing. It's that, for me, I just need time with the work. In my exhibition in Chicago, I've been thinking about bronze and sort of shifting a Soundsuit into bronze. And so it took me about 4 years to sort of like just go for it. Right. So like the exhibition there closes with a bronze Soundsuit. And so I'm in the process of doing my first 20-foot bronze Soundsuit. And so I'm sort of thinking more about public space and putting it into the world so that so many more people have access to it. Because still there's a lot of the population that still doesn't frequent museums, and so I'm interested in my work sort of serving in a different way.
Right, so into the streets, on the streets. And that was one that I really liked too, with the facade of the building, and the entire building was covered with everything. And it encompassed such a large space. And you're bringing on new techniques every time you do something. And so bronze is a different animal. You'll start working with different tools and a different understanding, but still incorporating your sensibility for the other touch and the other.
Yeah, you know, I'm working with some amazing foundries. I don't really touch anything.
No.
But I'm sort of directing and sort of, and it's a different way of a studio practice. And so, you know, that's interesting, and the translation is right on,
Wow.
which is like amazing. And it's something that I'm interested in pursuing going forward, as well as the piece that I did in New York and at the metro station at 42nd Times Square. It's a permanent piece, but that's the first time that I've worked in mosaic. And I worked with a company in Munich, Myers of Munich. And so I was sort of like not sure what it was, the translation would look like, but I was sort of curious. And it is so like unworldly to me when I saw it for the first time.
Oh God. Well, it sounds immense. Can you tell me the dimensions?
It's like, I don't know. Let's say, I mean, like maybe 30 feet by 40, one's probably feet, and then one's about 11 feet by 40, and then one's probably 11 by 150 feet. But massive, and like the level of work is astonishing. It's so incredible. And so like, when I saw it would be like the first time you would see it, because it's been made in Munich, and I'm like in Chicago, and then we all meet in New York, and so I'm just sort of like going nuts, like what is it gonna look like? You know, is it going to be what I imagine it being or not? It was so beyond what I had even imagined. So, you know, that's sort of opening up new sort of ideas.
Oh yeah. So,
yeah.
That might lead to why you're thinking of painting more two-dimensional flat surfaces or things like that. So.
Right. I'm not. Yeah, maybe.
Maybe. Okay. But okay, so now I'm imagining you as a great conductor or a great director. So you're assembling all of the gaffers and the writers and things, or the woodwinds, and you're directing this. And so you say you feel something first, then you collect what you need, and then you go at it. Is that a characterization?
Yeah.
Okay. So now, I'm going to try and get as much out of you as I can, but colors, movement. Another thing I like as an artist is modular units, because it makes you feel rich, like buttons. So you get a bunch of buttons or a bunch of one thing, you start feeling rich. So what's moving you now? What kind of shapes, colors, or what's moving you?
Well, you know, I'm doing bronze, so there's no color. But what's moving me is texture. and sort of like how does that translate emotionally? And so, you know, it's really about sort of just sort of surface sort of treatments and this level of seduction that sort of heightens the work in a different way, and scale and movement. You know, for me, like, movement can imply color or feeling, which can be emotional. So I'm sort of thinking, you know, about that. You know, I'm thinking about color without applying color.
That's good.
I'm thinking about movement without it actually moving. And so, you know, thinking about, well, how can I sort of establish that in an artwork? And it's, you know, it's just really sort of, you know, allowing the sort of processes that you're using to sort of do that. So it's a lot of sort of research, a lot of experimentation that sort of gets me to that place where it's great.
Because metal definitely has so many possibilities. The thickness of the metal, or the gauge, or how you texture it. You can mat it out, you can scuff it up, you can dent it, you can swirl it. So it's great form. So adding other elements to it, like the sense of place where it is, and the sense of what perspective the viewer is going to get. So you have to anticipate some of these things as well, right?
Maybe. I don't know. I mean, I'm not participating in anything because I'm sort of like...
For you, as you're working, you start looking at it from this perspective.
Oh, yeah. I'm just sort of, again, just sort of like wide open and sort of like, it's like collaging. I'm just sort of making it in the moment. And sort of, as we're sort of doing testing and sampling, I may find something that is like, oh my God, I want that right there. And so that's what we hold on to, and then all these bits and pieces all sort of come together, and there you have the form. But, you know, I don't really sort of, I'm just hoping something happens in the process.
Yeah, that's good.
Something has to happen.
Oh, it will, right. Good. So, back to one more thing I'm thinking about personally. In the studio, under your spell that you read for yourself, the two things that are most important, what are the foods and what is the music that's going on when you're working?
Food is, I try to eat healthy, but you know, like ice cream is my, like, I have to have it, like every day.
Okay.
Like every day.
All right.
So that's that. But you know, greens and things.
Oh yeah, you know.
Of course.
Comfort food. Right?
Music, Shirley Horn, Here's to Life CD, every day.
Oh wow.
Every morning. And then, you know, the studio, it could move from, it goes from Shirley Horn to sort of classical, then by the afternoon, it could be George Clinton.
Gotcha. So, well, those are the things in the
Or,
studio.
you know, just sort of like, it's really, but the morning always starts out pretty sort of calm and quiet. At the end of the day, it sort of like goes, you know, quiet, then, I mean, like here, then up, and then back down.
Cool. All right. One particular type of ice cream or various flavors?
Sort of all over the board.
butter brick?
Not really.
Not really? So, homemade back in the day?
Oh my God, I would love it every day, homemade ice cream.
Okay, so.
That would be really.
So, well, I've got a cook friend that does a lot of formulas for ice cream. And,
Really?
oh, yeah. So
Okay.
we can experiment. Well, that's the idea. So one more to kind of get closer to. You have regional, national, and international reach. You like to travel, you like to adventure. Do you speak more than one language, or, I mean, other than the visual language? Are you a polyglot, or are you just interested and curious?
Interested and curious.
All right, good. And so, do you have a cultural preference? Beaches, mountains?
Not really beaches.
All right. Well,
You know,
I got
I mean, I will do a beach, but
you're not.
I'm not trying to like,
No, you don't want a tan, right?
well, do I now? I will go and relax maybe
Yeah.
an hour, yeah.
Oh, yeah. 'Cause
And then I'm more interested in like sort of moving amongst the
Oh, okay. So you
city,
like
town, the rural
marketplaces-
area, whatever.
Marketplaces and places where there are people and commerce and things like that.
Yeah, maybe. I'm not really a people person. I mean, you know,
on the D-low.
yeah, right.
Okay, so, all right. And I understand, because the great unwashed is the great unwashed, you know, so understood. So anything you want to kind of leak? I mean, you've done quite a bit, but I'm really trying to get you to be more forthcoming.
What do you mean?
Well, I want to be involved is what I'm talking about. And,
In what?
yeah, exactly. So someplace you're, you know, looking at a site, or looking at a pile of things you want to acquire, or maybe collaborations you want to make, other artists or things that you respect, and those kind of things. I'm curious.
Okay.
I like that. Really.
I mean, there's a lot of things that are sort of in the air right now, but that are interesting. A lot of performance-based work, a lot of collaborations that are that I'm hoping to happen. Some new performance work, and my painting.
Okay, that's the big news right now.
That's the
But
big news.
no, I like that. But also the back to the music, kind of being a support for some of your artwork, as also as a part of the creative process. You're going to make more music with your art as part of that performance. Have the pieces be a part of the music.
Yeah, it's going to be really sort of collaborating with musicians, dancers. Yeah.
Okay. So,
And Kenny, that feels to me like a great way to segue into some of these audience questions. Before we do that, can we thank Kenny and Nick?
go ahead.
Thank you so much. I've got two questions that sort of seem to be thematic and things that people want to hear about. One a little heavier, and one that will be a bit more poignant. The first question, how do you navigate the whiteness of the art world and keep your social battery charged?
you know, I don't really, I just have to navigate my own world. It's, you know, whiteness, blackness, you know, it's, none of that has ever gotten in my way, so.
And there are a lot of educators in the audience, clearly, from the questions. They all sort of hover around the question, what might you want to say to young, creative people who are growing up in Central Missouri right now?
Get out. Sorry.
That's a beautiful way to end. Kenny.
Oh my God. I love it here.
Well, Kenny, thank you so much. Nick, thank you for your time. Welcome home.
Thanks.
And we love you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.